What's good, YouTube, and welcome to the house. I have a warning for you guys heading up into this metagame, and that's not to underestimate Traptrix. I think you should either have matchup knowledge against this deck and really know what it can do, and also be aware of the engines that it can mix with. I was testing it last night. It may be my new main deck for a while, but I will say it does have its upward problems, like losing the dice roll, but there's engines to compensate for that, as well as the spell and trap destruction that can be popular within this metagame. Well, let's pick up some of the new options that actually came available during Lightning Overdrive, and then the engines that you may not have considered fully. A lot of people, I think, put themselves in this bubble of trying to play it as a deck, especially with all the options it has, maybe playing some text like Parallel Exceed instead, but like not mixing it with other engines. Like, yeah, my Traptrix can do it on their own, and going back into other metagames, even from the start, it's relied on other powers. Like, it relied on the hands as well as the artifacts for Hat with Corey McDuffie, and then you also go into other metagames that it was successful, it tends to mix with other things. But in Traptrix Vesiculo, we got an amazing extender, of course unaffected by whole normal trap cards like most Traptrix. You can only use one of the following effects of her per turn, and only once that turn, so you have to choose which. You can send a set spell and trap you control to the graveyard, special summon this card from your hand. That often can end up being a resource for you, depending on the deck that you are using as well. Then her second effect is, if you control no cards in your spell and trap zone, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target a whole normal trap in your graveyard and set it to the field. So this is also a resource for later, because Traptrix's specialty is getting the opponent to play at your pace, grinding down their resources, and then getting a surplus of resources against them. We also picked up a nice Link too that does work very well. It is this Link summon card is unaffected by trap card effects, period, so it pairs very well with some certain surprises we'll talk about later. And then you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. After you activate a whole normal trap card, you can set it instead of sending it to the graveyard, so you can use that resource over and over again as long as your opponent doesn't take it out. And then during your end phase, you can target a Traptrix monster in the graveyard and special summon it in defense. We do have some Traptrix that have very good on special abilities that have lasted the test of time, such as Murmillo having the special ability of popping the opponent's back row and grindy other back row decks, and her normal summon is a +1, adding any normal whole trap card, which we've got a couple through the ages if you've been away from this deck. Then we also have Dionea. Her special summon effect is that you can target a whole normal trap card in your graveyard, set the target, but banish it during the end phase. But if you end up using it, well, it's going to go to the graveyard because you ended up using it instead of letting it hit that timer. And our normal summon is that she special summons a Traptrix from graveyard, a really nice extender play depending on how you've loaded up the graveyard or been able to play, but that is specifically a normal summon. We also gained Traptrix Mantis a while ago. When this card is normal summon, you can add a Traptrix monster from your deck to the hand. She's also unaffected by the effect of whole normal traps, and then once per turn she has a quick effect which can help trigger Sarachan. You are able to target a set spell and trap you control, return the target to the hand, and set another spell and trap from your hand. While you can't activate it, it helps you dodge things like, say, Cosmic Cyclone, and really help protect your resources, while also helping one of the superior extender / starter plays in Sarah. She's a Link 1, so any Traptrix becomes her. This Link summon card is also completely unaffected by trap cards. You can only use each of the following effects of Sarah once per turn. If a normal trap card is activated, you can special summon a Traptrix monster from the deck with a different name than the cards you control, allowing you for some really amazing plays during the opponent's turn. And then if you on summon, say, use that effect like Murmillo popping a spell or trap field spell, if your other Traptrix monster effect is activated, you can set a whole trap directly from the deck, helping you gain resources for later. Again, you can't use it the same turn you set it, but it's very useful in the resource battle after having already activated, say, cards you've set. So another, probably the newest trap hole that we've gained recently is Gravedigger's Trap Hole. It can't be understated. It's amazing. When your opponent activates a monster effect in their hand or graveyard, or when your opponent's banish monster effect is activated, negate its effect, and you inflict 2,000 damage to your opponent. So it won't destroy the card, but it will take care of an effect, and often that's like a hand trap pitching itself from the hand to the graveyard, so you will actually eat up their resource, and it really brings the deck to the next level. And doing that extra damage is also really huge because this deck tends to whittle down life points on its own, not at a very good pace, but we picked up a lot of cards. Now, you notice a lot of those extra deck monsters don't get any effect by traps. Like, So you can play cards that really hit people sideways that they wouldn't affect, like Torrential Tribute. When a monster is summoned, destroy all monsters on the field. What could be a really good extender after that and is underestimated from Lightning Overdrive? I know, the Amazement Engine. This would trigger on a new chain after Torrential's resolution to summon itself, and let's say your opponent used a starter extender to get 2 cards out there, you Torrential them, now you summon Arlecchino out as maybe a second engine to play along Traptrix. And if a trap card is activated, except during the damage step, you can special summon this from the hand. If your opponent normal or special summons a monster or monsters except during the damage step, you can target one of those face-up monsters they control and equip an attraction trap card from the deck to the target. This then makes them, after already using a starter extender, go through another extender that you can end up flipping face down or negating the effects of, and that's really amazing, isn't it? You're going to be able to almost consistently deal with your opponent's problems by using Arlecchino. You also do have an archetype searcher with Kamika, although that would eat up your normal summon in order to get there, but then we have that nice extender to still get to Sarachan and Vesiculo that we picked up within the deck. So there's one engine that melds almost seamlessly with the Traptrix, and you can decide how to play it. You could just play Ticket Time, Arlecchino, and the other two. You can put in Kamika. There's a lot of places you can go with that. Another engine that works very well, you might not want to hear, is the Eldlich. Golden Lore gives you the ability to deal with the things that your opponent has put on board, though, if you end up losing that dice roll. Then the traps inside the archetype work very well with Vesiculo in terms of being able to send these to the graveyard and then get a resource for the opponent's turn and have extra disruption for the opponent's turns, and that can't be understated. This is also a normal trap to activate for Sarah that ends up being searchable later by what you have sent. Isn't that amazing? Now, talking about power plays for if you go second, the Dogmatika engine's very expensive right now, but thanks to the 2021 Megatins, should become cheaper over time, and you have so many searchers that these restrictions, they apply after they're summoned. So you can special summon Sarah, you can end up special summoning Ecclesia after shutting off your special summons the rest of the turn from the extra deck, and end up getting your searches and being able to say get a negate, or end up with a power play for next turn, or even getting to a trap card that you want to see against your opponents. Ecclesia and Nadier's Servant ends up working very, very well as follow-ups to your plays that don't disrupt them, don't eat your normal summon, and you still have to fight for that spot, right? Like, is Traptrix worth it over, say, normal summon Alistair effect that I've been doing for the last 3 years? And I say things like Marmillo or your extension plays do pair very well, and you don't have to do Traptrix Dogmatika. You can add in, say, the Amazement engine with that and actually fit it into a 40 card, 45 card deck. Don't tell the DB grinder. Then you also do have the Artifact engine still today. Being able to cut off the entire extra deck is huge. Lancia is also huge in the format, and you can still tech that one of Moral Tech to pop and deal with problems. We already mentioned him. You have Parallel Exceed for power plays. I'm actually shocked at how many times I end up with the opportunity to end up going into a Link 4 on my opponent with how much extenders can be in this deck, and Parallel Exceed obviously adds to that. And you also do have Double Yep, Utopia Double, or rank 4s in general to end up powering through and putting on board depending on how the format turns out. Now, that matchup knowledge, I said, somebody actually last night tried to use Impermanence on Sarah thinking she just had that generic effect of not being affected by normal whole trap cards, unlike the extra deck monsters in general, and they went, yes, I quit this duel. So you want to know how to end up dealing with these boards, and also heavily within this format, what people side deck is Cosmic Cyclone, a 1-for-1, which is really bad pacing against this deck, instead of a cards like Twin Twister, where giving up the 2 to take care of their 2 cards can really put you on top. But what is unfortunately present heavily in this format is Lightning Storm, and at 3, people are spending a lot of money to have access to this card, and it wipes your back row completely, really hurting this deck if you don't have activations and follow-up. That's where Amazement, I do think, comes in, being able to have Arlecchino and being able to push back, but this singular card really hurts. And then Harpy's Feather Duster came off the ban list, and some people still side that one of Red Reboot. The other problem I think a lot of people have are deciding exactly which trap holes, and I do think some are also very underlooked also. Floodgate is one of the most common in terms of dealing with any extender or starter how you want by flipping it down, but it cannot affect link monsters, and almost every single trap hole has like a little bit of its armor showing where an arrow can just go right through, right? Like every single one ends up missing something. Like this network trap hole is heavily underlooked. When your opponent special summons a monster or monsters from the main deck or graveyard, you banish it face down. That is awesome, but it's two very specific situations. Just like we have time space trap hole, this only hits cards from the hand or extra deck, and you also take damage where you're summoning cards with extremely low attack where you'll take more damage. We have, you know, Traptrix trap hole nightmare, but this only does special summon monsters, and if they activate the effect this turn, and with matchup knowledge, people end up playing around this pretty easily. Void trap hole only hits monsters with 2,000 or more attack, and then bottomless only 15 or more, and also destroys the card specifically before banishing, and some things are destruction proof, unfortunately. So you have so many different options to actually choose from, but all of them only hit a specific area no matter how amazing. That's why you end up relying on other engines with this deck. You have amazing starter cards, you now have an amazing extender, you have amazing options in the extra deck to choose from, and then you actually have backup power plays, things that can deal with your opponent when you are going second, and I really like that, and the mix is there. But I think you're going to see this time where you do see this matchup end up being underlooked, underrepresented, and then stealing an event where you were like, yeah, I knew they had it in them, but did you really? Did you pay enough attention? Were you siding for them versus other things? Unlikely, because of how often you'll see this matchup. So don't underestimate Traptrix. I really like it in this metagame. I might be playing it for a little bit, but it does have its uphill battles. What do you think of Traptrix and their consistency versus power output? How do you compensate for that? And let me know, if you're a Traptrix player, how have you enjoyed the updates to the deck? Because a lot of people really do seem to be enjoying it. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this conversation and more in-depth talk about the options you might have. And I couldn't cover all the engines, obviously, just the ones off the top of my head that do offer a power for when you lose that dice roll, or ability to have backup plays that meld very well with the deck, in my opinion. Hopefully I didn't get any rulings wrong too, but I love the legacy of this deck. I love the deck moving forward, and I do think that you should consider at least playing a couple games against it and getting used to that pacing and what you can do against it if you are playing the current meta for that remote dual YCS.